So today we are gathered here. First of all, I will introduce myself. My name is Prasad Devle. I'm working in Mindbowser as full-time full-stack developer. We are gathered here today to learn and know about Auth0. For that, we have Ronak and Jimesh with us. So we can move toward the introduction of Auth0. Ronak, next slide. Okay, so this is the overview. So first of all, we are going to see introduction to Auth0. Then we will look into the benefits and features. Then of course, dashboard and application setup. It will it will included in the implementation part on the client side. Then libraries, SDK, Auth0, which library we can choose, which library is best and which is suitable as per the technology. Then Auth0 implementation in the client and server side. Then why it's secure, pricing and questions. So in between the session, if you have any question, guys, then feel free drop that question in the chat section. We will try to cover all this question at the end of the session in the Q&A session. So let's move toward the introduction of Auth0. Okay, so what is Auth0? So and basically why we need Auth0. So if you know guys, so these days we develop so many web application and native mobile application, and in that we need authentication and authorization platforms. So basically authentication authorization platform, we need it for the sign in and sign up functionality to authenticate the user and to access user securely to the application. So for that, what we do, we build this authentication authorization module by scratch in different technologies like Java and Python. So while building this from scratch, so we face so many issues and it take time also. So and after all, if we build this, so we also need to face some security threats in that. So to avoid these kind of security threats and to save the time for building this model from scratch, like Auth0 is the best solution for it. So Auth0 basically authorization and authentication platform. It allows user to it allows us to save our time and risk in security security and authentication while authentication and authorization. So why we choose Auth0? So Auth0 provides us like token-based authentication. It has a social network authentication, passwordless authentication, multi-factor authentication, and integrated change password and forget password flow. So token-based authentication. So Auth0 provides us a basic JWT token-based authentication, which has the access and refresh token. So let's look more into it. So when we call and login API of the Auth0, so it will in a response it gives us the access and refresh token. But Auth0 has some 3 different types of token in it, which they call as a specialized token. So first one is the refresh token, which is basically we use to acquire a new access token. When our access token get expired, then we can acquire new access token using the refresh token. Then the second one is the IDP access token. So what is IDP access token? So in our application, sometimes we call them third-party APIs. So to call the third-party APIs, we need the IDP access token. And last one is the Auth0 management API access token. So Auth0 do have their management API. So why we need a management API? So when we register a user and when we sign up in the sign up using the Auth0, then that user gets stored in the Auth0 database. So if we sometimes we need to update or delete that user. So to update or delete that user forcefully, we need to call this management API. And to call that management API, we need this Auth0 management API access token. And this token is basically very short-lived token. So its expiry time is very short, like almost 1 or 2 minutes. Second is social network authentication. So Auth0 provide us a social network-based authentication. It is very smooth. So we just need to call and social function of the Auth0, and we just need to pass that which social media using which social media you wanted to sign up or sign in. So Auth0 supports like Google, Facebook, Apple, Slack, Twitch, Microsoft account, LinkedIn, GitHub, this kind of and many other social sites. What is passwordless? So passwordless, so if you know, the traditional way of login is we accept the username and password to authenticate the user, but password of the user can easily hacked or tracked by the malicious attacks or by the hackers. To avoid these attacks and hackers, and to avoid these attacks and hackers, Auth0 provide us the passwordless authentication. So what is passwordless authentication? In that we have username, but we don't store password of the password for that username. So what we did, we just enter the username, and after that we send an OTP or verification link, or not verification, we send OTP or login link over the mail or mobile number, and using that OTP or login link, user can log in into the application successfully. Multi-factor authentication. So I will go short because we are going to more. We're going to see more about multi-factor authentication in next slide. Multi-factor authentication has like three different steps. One is single factor authentication, one is two-factor authentication, and third one is multi-factor authentication. Integrated change password and forget password flow. So Auth0 do have Auth0 provide us login and sign up. So they do have integrated change password and forget password flow. So we don't need to implement it externally for change password and forget password. We just need to call change password or forget password API, and they just send us they just send us a change password link over the mail, and we just need to click over that link, and their UI of Auth0 for change password get pop up. So these are the features of Auth0: universal login, single sign-on, which is known as a SSO, multi-factor authentication, and passwordless. So we already seen passwordless in previous slide. So what is universal sign-in? Universal login. So universal login is basically the traditional login which is provided by the Auth0, which accept the username and password. But in that, when we call the universal login of Auth0, we call the Auth0 API, and we work with the so they just pop up their Auth0 UI on your front-end application to accept your username and password. So they called it as a universal login. So universal login do have like two different types of experience. Like they call it as a new universal login experience, and second one is the classic universal login experience. So new universal login experience, it has like it does not require JavaScript to work and offer a simpler and faster experience for the end users. So if your application does not support the JavaScript, then you can use new universal login experience. And in the classic universal login experience, it can work efficiently with the JavaScript supported web pages. Single sign-on. So what is single sign-on? Single sign-on is a like authentication feature. Let's consider we have multiple application and we want only one authentication platform there. So we can take an example of Google. Let's say when we log in into the Gmail application, then we will directly get login into the YouTube also, in the Google Drive also, in the Google Photos, in the Google Sheets, Google PPTs, everywhere. And if we log out from any single of this application, then we will get directly log out from all other applications. So this is called as a single sign-on. And when we say the logout, and when we click on the logout, then it will log out from the all other application. Then it called as a single logout. Multi-factor authentication. So what is multi-factor authentication? At the time of authentication, we verify user using the username and password, and we verify password over the username. So we match password with the username. If password matches, then we allow user to access the application. Okay, so this is the single factor authentication, in that we just accept username and password. Second one is two-factor authentication. So it has a 2 steps. That's why it's called as a two-factor authentication. So first of all, we accept the username and password. And if password is if password is correct, then again we accept like a pin from the user, which is that pin is only known for the user itself. So we can take example of banking websites. So most of all two-factor authentication are implemented in the banking website. There you can see we enter the login, we enter the username and password there, and after that we also need to enter the PIN which is provided by the bank itself to the user, right? And third one is the multi-factor authentication. So multi-factor authentication have the multiple steps to authenticate the user. So in that, the first basic step is we accept username and password. If password matches, then second step is come. So in that second step, we can verify the user using biometric scans also, and using the PIN number and using the OTP also. So we can also add OTP steps in there. So OTP will be sent to the email address and phone number over the phone of the user, and using that OTP we can verify the user. So in the multi-factor Auth0 provide different kind of features like push notification. Auth0 provides SMS notification, voice notifications, one-time password. We can also implement Cisco Duo security and recovery codes using the Auth0. So benefits of using Auth0: security. So why Auth0 is secure, and what kind of security Auth0 provides us? So Auth0 can detect attacks and stop malicious attempts to access the application from the third party. So when we deploy our application over the web, so there are so many hackers, or there are so many malicious attacks can be happen on our website. So Auth0 stop all these attacks. So and how it stop and how it detects. So Auth0 have their algorithm run 24/7 over the application. So they detect bot detection, suspicious IP throttling, brutal force protection, and breach password detection. If four of them is happen on our application, they also notify that user over the email address. Multiple UI option. So what is multiple UI option? So as I already told you, in the universal login, Auth0 provide us their UI screens, like for the change password, forget password, on for the login screen also, and for the sign up screen also. So in multiple UI option, what you can do, you can customize that UI screen, which and make those pages which will match to your application theme. Auth0 analytics. So Auth0 also provide us analytics of like how many users are login, how many failed logins attempt, how many successful login attempts, like which user is login for how much time, and how many successful sign up are there, and how many users are using, how many users are not available, like not much active on the application and all. So clear documentation and many code example in popular programming language. So Auth0 have very good documentation. Like if you want to implement Auth0 with any technology, so they have in their documentation you can just find the code which is suitable to your technology. You just need to go, so let's take example of sign up. If you want to implement and sign up, go to the sign up page of in the documentation, go to the sign up tab, then you will find the drop down of the technology, and you just need to select your technology, and you will get the code snippet of that technology. Libraries supporting many technologies. So Auth0 have multiple libraries which is supported to multiple technology. In that they have auth0.js, auth0 spa.js, and many others. API support. So Auth0 also supports some third-party API. Multiple options of settings. So multiple options of settings. In that, I already told you that Auth0 allow us to implement push notification, SMS notification, voice notification, and in that they have one more setting for the password. So in the password, let's take an example of Facebook. If we try to reset an password of Facebook, or try to if we forget the password of Facebook, so at the time of setting new password, you can't set the previous password as your new password. So if your previous password is abcd@123, then while setting the new password, you can't set password again abcd@123. You have to choose new password. Okay, or Facebook also don't allow to use your like previously history password as to set as a new password. So same functionality is Auth0 is providing us. So if you want to implement this kind of functionality, then you can also go for the Auth0 and use it in your application. So they have their history count setting. So you just need to set how many previous password you don't want to set user, like 3 or 5. Then you just need to click OK. Next slide. So these are some pricing plan for the Auth0. So in the free plan, you will get up to 7,000 active users and unlimited logins. In the essential plan, there are like you can have active users up to 10,000. Unlimited social connections you can do, and custom domains are supported. And in professional, but in the essential, you can't use multi-factor authentication. Like you can't use two-factor authentication and multi-factor authentication there. So for that, you have to buy a professional one. Yeah, so this is the use case of Auth0. So on the device we run our front end application, and we have our backend application here. So in the middle of that, Auth0 comes in a picture. So what we did, our front end application first call and login API to the Auth0. Auth0 validate that username and password, and if that user is verified and if that user successfully verified, then Auth0 gives us an access and refresh token. So using that access refresh token, we can call our backend APIs. So what backend API does? Backend API again took that access token and go to the Auth0. If that access token is valid, then Auth0 said backend that this user is valid. Then our backend application will give successful response to the front end application. So this is the use case for the Auth0. So for now onwards, for next part, I would like to call Ronak to take over.
Hi guys. So thank you, Prasad, for the wonderful presentation. So let me just guide you through the setup. Okay, so we basically have a small idea about how Auth0 works. So let's now see like behind the scenes how everything is going on. So firstly, I'll open a dashboard. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so now let's see about how we can set up a client on the Auth0 platform. So firstly, there are multiple tenants. So I'll explain basically what the tenant does. So suppose you have a multiple environment, you in your web application, you have a multiple architecture system for production, staging, and QA. Basically, you have other different environments. So for that, you can create multiple tenants. Okay. So for production, you can have a different tenant setup. For staging, you can have a different setup, and for development, you can have a different tenant. So if you want to create a tenant, just click on create tenant, and you can write your tenant name. So I will write development. And region is by default US, and I will select the environment as development. So it takes 30 seconds to get created. Okay, so once this is created, basically there are two things which are important if you want to authenticate, connect this with your React applications. So those two things are your client ID and your domain ID. So first, if you want to create for a React application, which is a scope of our presentation, so just go on create application, click on a single page web application, and just write your name of the application. So once you create this will get created, and it will give you a basic guide about how you can connect this. So go to settings first, and I'll explain what these things are. So this is one of the most important thing, that your React application will ask you for the connection with this Saturday demo tenant. So just copy this and paste it in an env file. So I recommend if you use an env file for this, so that you can have a multiple architectural environment setup done. So domain ID. So these two things, as I spoke earlier about, are the most important things. Write a domain ID as well in your env file, and just connect it once you create that auth0 object instance, and just write these two there. So you will get connected to this tenant. So you can also have your own application logo here. So when I say application logo, so if you get any mails regarding forgot password or anything, or confirmation about your creation, you can have your company logo set up here. So one important thing here is, if you are creating any third party APIs and you want to do some operations, so I recommend using a route called /authorize. There and there you can call your third party APIs and you can input it here. So once you input it here, it will be a callback URL, and then you can get all the tokens and everything else. The second part is a callback URL. So what a callback URL does. So basically, if you log in into an Auth0, you use a Auth0 universal login page, and then you hit on login. So this callback URL is basically where you want to redirect the user from the Auth0 universal login to your application. So if you have a dashboard, right, which is authentic, like suppose let's take an example of authenticated dashboard. So basically, you will just write it as your domain name and slash as auth dashboard. So this will be your callback URL. So once you get authorized from Auth0, it will redirect you to this route. So this is what a callback URL does. Now logout URL. So logout URL basically is if you want to log out from a session basically. So once you hit this link, it will be basically something like domain name /logout. So once you hit this link, the Auth0 will detect it's a logout functionality called, and it will log and clear the entire session. So web origins is you can just put in your callback URL here. That's what I had done. So now let's cover what are these tokens. So this is the heart of Auth0. For security purposes, you should carefully manipulate all these settings. So I will guide you through this. So what an ID token does. So ID token is basically a proof that you are authenticated. Okay, and it must be strictly used on the front end side only. Or developer even I had done a mistake earlier in the past is passing an ID token to a third party API. So if you do that, you are you can get attacks. Like if I copy your token, which has a validity of suppose 5 minutes, and within that 5 minutes, I hit the URL through some third party application, and so I can access your details. So one common mistake all even I had done is passing ID token in APIs. So ID token is basically like a JWT token, and it basically just gives you a proof that you are authenticated. So now coming to that, what you should pass. So you should just pass the access token. Now what an access token does is access token grants you the authority to access the login, the authenticated features of your Auth0 platform. So once you log in, and Auth0 then provides you an access token. So it is that proof that now I am logged in, I can do whatever I want until I am maintained in that state. So ID token has an expiration time. So by default, Auth0 sets it to 36,000 seconds. And once this expires, there is a policy of refresh token. So what refresh token does is once this expires, it will redirect, regenerate a new ID token. Okay, and this also has an expiry time, which is set to this by default, and you can of course change it to your custom needs. So now what does this lifetime means is that after this time has surpassed, this refresh token can no longer be used. Okay, so now there is one more thing, is a refresh token rotation. So you can also rotate a refresh token. If you want to create a more secure application, you can expire the refresh token and then regenerate a new refresh token via the rotation policy. So this is the inactivity lifetime. So what happens is if I've just logged in, and for 2 3 I have set my inactivity period to 1 day, and I don't come back for 1 day, and my refresh token lifetime is 2 days. So this inactivity timeout means that the refresh token will expire if the user is not active. Like he has not issued a new access token or try to play with the Auth0 APIs. So this is what an inactivity lifetime does. So now I'm going to show you some good features which will conclude that how Auth0 makes our developers' life easy. So suppose now by default Auth0 gives you a social sign-in as Google. So if I'll tell you the first thing is a database. So this database is a by default created database of username, password, and in this whatever manual sign-ins, sign-ups you do or logins, you are not using any social. Those accounts are stored in this database. Okay, and of course you cannot access any you can see the user data, but you cannot see the passwords, and that's but obvious. So you can also have some policies set here. You can include this have a username, or you can have a password policy, which is one of the best features of Auth0. So you can set your password strength. You can, if you want a more secure application like password, you can just go to the excellent. And you can also have this password history, like you cannot use those previous 5 6 passwords. That count also you can set it here. So password dictionary, you cannot set common passwords or words from dictionary. Or and one last thing is personal data. So one whenever you sign up, so you use your name, I'll write Ronak Rajvanshi, and then I set my password as Ronak 1234. So that also I can disallow the user to set it as for more secure application. So the second part is social. So by default, Auth0 gives you a Google account setup, and it is just for development purposes. And if you want to use it for uh, you can have, if you have a very scalable application, then you are required to input your client ID. You can create a Google developer account and opt in the client ID for the same. Okay. So now if I want to create any connection, you can just go to create new connection, and whatever social connection you want to create and whatever Auth0 supports are listed here. Uh, this depends basically on your use case. So you can see it supports multiple platforms. So yeah, just go on this and follow the guidelines for the same. So yeah, that was it. Let's now see how this actually works. So I've already created an application. So like now you can see this is a dashboard basically, which is not authenticated. And I'm just thinking, in this is an API, which is a public API. So this is a third party API which Jemisha had created for me. So this is from an unauthenticated user. And so you can see it is basically showing that hello from unauthenticated user, because I'm not passing my token to the same. So now let me try to log in. So once I click on login, I will be directed to a universal login page. Now you can use this as well. And if you want, like there is a use case that you want to use your own user interface. Okay. So for that, I would recommend a library called Auth0 SPA, which is a single page application. So you can use that and use the Auth0 APIs to manage your own login system, and you can not have this universal login, and you can use your own user interface. Now this universal login page can also be customized. You can change the look and feel for the same. Also, whatever social connections I had done are listed here. So you saw I had a by default Google one done here. So this is done here. And if you include more social connections, they will be populated here. So now let me go and let me proceed to create an account. Let me open the server. So I've just created a dummy email. So yeah, let me set the password as. So whatever password policy you had earlier selected will be shown up here. Okay, so this is my password. Let me continue. So this is an authorized application because it's a local host. That's why it is telling me to accept, because it does not feel safe basically. So if you have your own domain, this won't populate. So once I click on accept, now you can see I'm in an authenticated homepage. So this is how simple it was. So imagine if you had to create your own service or service, it would take so much time. You had to create your own token-based authentication. You had to create your own callback URLs and everything else. So now if I ping an authenticated API, now you can see it has got my details as well. This is Gemish's API again, and I've passed in my token and got the response. So now I can see this is basically my ID token. As I told, it's a JWT token, and I've just decoded, and you can see I've got all my details. Like my nickname basically is just populated from your username. So yeah, let me open that Yopmail and see if I've got any confirmation. So see this now. Like you can see, this is a verify link, and this is saying verify your account. Since this was a manual sign up, it is now asking me to verify the account just for no it's like a spam protection. Just So now you can see this is email verified false. Let me refresh it again. I have not verified my email as of now. So yeah. So this is a magic link, okay? And this email template also can be customized to match your own UI needs. So once I click on the magic link, you can see this email is verified. So I'll just close this and I'll refresh it. And now you can see my email verified is true. So you can see that once I have refreshed this page, I am recalling that ID token, and it is giving me all those updated fields. So this was one of the small demonstration. Let me now show you the other cool features. So yeah, let me do a forgot password, and let me just input the same email. So I've got a password change request. This will direct me to a change password flow. This UI can also be customized to match your own needs. So my password is changed. So now you can see I'm logged out basically, and I will try to log in again. And this is how the change password flow works. So this is how simple it gets with this service, and you don't have to do anything. You just have to set up everything on the dashboard, and you can do everything at ease. It makes a developer's life very easy. If you go to branding, you can. This is where you can all customize the UI and email templates, everything else. One last thing, passwordless. So this has two features, SMS and email. So if you want to do an SMS passwordless connection, like you want to do an OTP sign in, so you need a Twilio or token and SID. So you have to go to Twilio and set up your own, your account for the same. Email also works the same. You can use the Auth0 templates, and you can also have your own email templates. Okay, yeah, that's it. Yes, Jamish.
Thank you, Ronak, for the wonderful explanation about how front end works, how
Thanks.
Auth0 setup works, and thank you, Prasad, for giving introduction about Auth0. So myself, Jamish Wadia, I'm working as a full stack developer here, and I have built a backend mechanism for the same. I mean, for the Auth0. So let's see how backend setup works with Auth0. Yeah. So for the backend setup, as Ronak earlier mentioned, that we need client ID and secret ID to implement the login mechanism on the front end. So same as we need those keys on backend as well to validate and get the tokens and everything. So we also need one dependency to read the JWT token that issued by our Auth0. So there are lots of dependency available in market to do the same, and we will use one library to decode our our JWT token. Yeah, so this is the dependency that we are using on our backend. Next. So this code snippet is basically a bean that we use on our backend to establish connection with our Auth0 server. I mean, the Auth0 that we have created, this snippet will be make a connection with them. So in this snippet, we are checking few things like making connection, then connection read timeout, then connection timeout, and also there is one caching mechanism added. So this will make a smoother process to validate the token from backend to the Auth0 server. Yeah. So this also checks every token needs to be clear three checks. First one is the algorithm check, second one is the signature check, and third one is the JWT claim check. So any of one check is failed, then you will be not authorized to access the backend. I mean, the backend will reject the token. So in the algorithm check, when you set up your application, Auth0 will ask you to which algorithm you want to use to sign your JWT token. Yeah, next slide. So that's a brief that the check that I talked about. You need to pass the three checks, and yeah, so that's the method when your token will be get validated. So this method accepts an token and uh, process everything to check if the token is valid or not. So this method includes two other methods like verifying audience and verifying the issuer. That's a method when your jailbreak token will check if the issuer is the same or not. So there can be chance if someone uses a different token from different issuer, then if this method will use to check the validator. If validator doesn't if the issuer doesn't match, your request will be rejected by the backend. So this also one check when you are checking the audience that we have configured on our Auth0 application. That's also one check that we need on our backend application to validate the token. Yeah. So this is a method where you can read the claims. So JWT contains all the details. Those are obtained from the token, from the user. So this is a simple method where we are reading the JWT token and we are reading the email from that token. So as Ronak shown us on a login screen, I am sending one email. So that's coming from here. You can also read other things like is token is verified, user is verified, first name, last name, mobile number, profile picture. Everything can be obtained from the JWT token and the claims. So you can create other methods as per your requirement. Yeah. So Auth0 also provides good features like role-based authentic access control and everything. So you can use their own, or you can build your own security mechanism as per your requirement with use of Spring Security and JWT filters. Yeah. So that's the minimal requirement to build your backend with Auth0. So you can play around with other things like as per your requirements to build up or enhance your security. But this is minimal things that you will need to create your backend application.